Is visiting in the home of Albert Hill. Mr. Hill lives at 213 West 12th here in Benton, and he's a person I know that many of you already know, but some of you would like to meet. Thank you for letting us come, Mr. Hill.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Glad to.
I read a recent interview of you in the paper, and it sort of excited my interest. When we first started this program, Shelby advertised for people to come in, and 50 of them did. Now, since that time, I just get the people that call me or I happen to think of accidentally, and this reminded me of you. I remembered that I'd bought our present home from you.
That's right. That's right. And your dad and I were real close friends.
Yes, sir. Now, from the articles and the things that we usually do, we start off and get a little background of you for the benefit of those interested in genealogy. Your father's name was?
John Cowley Hill.
And your mother was?
Harriet Eleanor Hale. She was a Hale from Callaway County.
Now, were you born in Marshall County?
I was born in Marshall County, right where you turn into the TVA Park, down right on the edge of the water.
Well, your family, as I noticed, you had traced it all the way back
to my great-grandfather.
In Birmingham,
England, yeah.
And we had a town in this county named after that city.
Yeah, that's where they put my great-granddad off. He was, well, he got misfortune enough that he lost two real in England. When he lived over there, the oldest son heired everything. The rest of the children didn't heir anything. And his family was real wealthy, but he knew he wasn't going to get a dime. So he tried to run off and come to America when he was 17. And his mother caught him before he got out of the 3-mile limit where she could search a ship, and found him and taken him back. Well, during that next year, why, he is trying to find some way to get to America. So he got in with a bunch of some men that was bringing horses over here from England, worked his way across. He landed down in Keysport, Mississippi. Well, he did. He had got pretty wealthy down there with a livery stable and carriages, and hotel. When the Northern Army moved south,
This is in the Civil War.
This Civil War. And he was he had everything he had in it now. Well, they taken over his horse stock and burned his carriages and his livery stable and just taken over the hotel. Well, he had all of his money tied up in the old Confederate money. We had thousands of dollars of that old Confederate money. Well, he was completely broke in.
Of course, it was, since they lost the war, it wasn't worth anything.
That's right, And so he had gone to gambling quite a bit. He had won this money off of this fellow that day, and he come on to him with a knife, and he shot him. So he was put in jail, and my granddad, his only son, or only child, broke him out of jail, him and 2 other men. Of course, they was hiding him down in the cellar, and he was having to stay down there all the time, couldn't get out, and he throwed one of his English fits. And he got out there in town and shot through the window in the bar room there where my grandfather was sitting on a keg, so they had to move him. So they brought him up to Corinth, Mississippi, and they put him on a packet boat that run up and down the Tennessee River. Well, he knew the captain on it because he'd ordered supplies from Paducah had been shipped up to Corinth, and he'd haul them down Mississippi to his hotel. So it happened to be that this captain that he knew was a brother to Mrs. James Love. That was Robert Earl Love's grandmother.
Yes.
So, and that's how come he put him off at Birmingham, and that's how come us to be and happen to be the same name as where he is born and raised.
Yeah. Well.
But the old man got too old then. He couldn't ever make a comeback, and he had let two fortunes had slipped right between his hands. So he died in 1896, I believe it was. He died.
Now I understand, Mr. Hill, that your father took pneumonia and died when you were fairly young.
Yeah, he was only 44.
Mm-hmm.
He always believed the measles would kill him. And of course, when measles got in the neighborhood, he wouldn't let any of us kids go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But my oldest brother come home and broke out with him before we knew he had a chance for it. So he went to getting things in shape. And he owed Mr. Alec Provine, lived down near Gilbertsville. I guess you know it, Rockford, Provine, and
Yes, sir, the name's very familiar to me.
Daddy for a team of mules, so he rode a horse down there to pay off that note. And he come on those cold spring rains on him all the way back, and he taken down with measles that night and then take pneumonia. And of course back then all I had was a little Calomel or something like that to give you. If you got pneumonia back in those days, you was almost sure to go.
Oh, that was true up till the sulfa drugs
You
of the
come in.
1940s.
That's right.
And then later, of course, penicillin.
Penicillin and the other come on. But back then I didn't have anything.
No. And you were, what, about 7?
I was 7 years old.
And your mother had how many children?
10 children.
Now, that left her in a real tough spot.
Tough spot. Mr. John Price, you don't know that, Judge Joe Price's daddy.
I remember Judge Joe Price.
Well, it's his daddy, and my dad had worked for him before he and my mother married. And he always went to Mr. Price for advice and things like that. Maybe borrowed money from him, I don't know. But he came down and wanted to adopt 3 of us children.
Mm-hmm.
Mother said, no. Why, he said, Heidi said, there ain't no way in the world you can raise all 10 of them. Well, she had faith, a whole lot more than I've got. She said, well, I'll go as far as I can go, and then the Lord will take over. And she believed that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I've gone up to Murray after a lot of years. Well, she said, I knew I'd get some money somewheres today because I put the last penny I had in Sunday school this morning. And she had that kind of faith all the way through.
You know, that just about brings tears to your eyes.
Yeah, it does when I just think about it.
Uh-huh.
And I think about my brother and I, we were together away from home. We sent some money home, but we could have sent a whole lot more and made it a whole lot easier on her, but we waited too late to do it.
Young people are not as thoughtful as they are when they get a little older.
No, that's right too. That's right. And but I don't know how in the world she got 10 of us raised up, and I reckon she made a pretty good job, as none of us ever had to go to the penitentiary.
Well, that's quite a recommendation too. Now, did you live here or in Birmingham?
I lived in Birmingham till I was 18 years old. Well, I didn't. I went to high school at Alamo. Back then, I just had 2 years of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I left school. I went to my oldest brother in Truman, Arkansas. He was assistant cashier of the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he put me in school out there and made me finish high school. And
Now that was considerably more education than the average person then had.
that's right. And the average, that's right.
Mhm.
Well, and I got one semester in college, and he was single at that time, and he was going to send me on. He wanted to make a doctor out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, I wanted to be, but then I'd worked on a farm a year or two for a fellow for $20 a month and board, and if I'd taken Saturday afternoon off, they'd dock me 27 cents.
Oh my, that was a rough
And
life.
so then, the time I got through there, why, young boys was going off and making $6, $7 a day, and I thought that's all the money you'd ever want to make.
Yeah.
So I went to work for a railroad company in Centralia, Illinois, in 1922, September.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there about till 25, and I went to Detroit. That's where I met my wife in Detroit. She was born in Ireland, Belfast, Ireland.
Belfast, Ireland. Well, now, before we get clear away, let me ask you, did you go to grade school in Marshall County?
Yes, in Birmingham.
You went to Birmingham.
And I started here at Benton in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Benton and Hardin was the only two high schools in the county at
Yes,
that
sir.
time.
Uh-huh.
And my uncle was principal at Alamo, and he lived at Murray.
Mm-hmm.
We drove backwards and forwards every day, and he called my mother or wrote her something, told her to send me up there to him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was an old bachelor when he married, and he married an old maid, and both of them never done anything except teach school.
Yes, sir.
And they thought all you had to do was look at the kid and he better jump, and I almost had to.
But you didn't enjoy that too
No, I
much.
didn't enjoy that because I'd been kindly counted as boss, because when I was 14 years old, I was the oldest boy at home to take over the farming.
Uh-huh.
And I'd kindly had my own way, and it rubbed it pretty much when I got a boss that thought every kid ought to just jump when he was and do whatever they think they ought to do.
So you stayed in Centralia, worked for the Illinois Central?
No, I worked for CB&Q.
Uh-huh. Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they went to laying off there, and I went to Detroit. And
Where'd you go to work there?
well, I first went to work for the Michigan Central Railroad, but in Centralia, I'd been an inspector in the yards.
Mm-hmm.
They set them up then pretty quick. You didn't have to work your whole 4 years apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you could get an opening, you got moved up.
Mm-hmm.
So on Sunday, only people I knew in Detroit at that time was Clint Miller from Hardin. You remember Clint?
Yes, sir.
I had Clint's address. I hit Detroit with $2.50. And I didn't know how far they lived away from the Michigan Central Station.
Mm-hmm.
So I called in a taxi cab. Right out, told him what number I wanted to go to, just like I knew the city. I'd made up my mind I'd ride $2.40 out in a cab. If I wasn't there, I'd get out and get a streetcar.
Yeah.
But it was only about 5 blocks, so I got down for 65 or 70 cents or something. Well, on Sunday, the next day, I went out to Michigan Central and got on in the paint department. And all I had to do was just paint where a carpenter was going to put a piece of steel on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a pretty good job. And I'd been working nights at Centralia at nights, and I was young then, and I'd think every night when I'd go to work at 11 o'clock, well, in the morning, I'm going to bed as soon as I get in, but I was a young buck kid, and I'd get washed up and cleaned up for the morning, and I'd be wide awake, and I'd be out till about time to go to work that night, but same thing over and over and over. So, but I went down to Clint's, and on Sundays, man and his wife, friends of theirs that I'd known in Truman, Arkansas too, come over and visit, and he was a plumber. So he said his helper had quit. He believed his boss would be looking for someone. So we called him, and he said he'd let us know. So Monday, they put me sandblasting them old cars, and that old thing weighed about 50 pounds, that machine that they had in it. You go up and down, up and down.
Dusty and a lot of noise.
A lot of noise, and I was so tired that night when I rode the streetcar plumb downtown before I saw where I was at. Well, that Monday night then, this fellow came over to Clint's, friends of ours and them, and he told me his boss had put one on. So I went out the next morning and started plumbing, and he did. I followed that line.
You learned the plumbing business.
In Detroit. Well, in 1930, when the crash hit, I'd been down here along in the summer and fall, and I'd had a job ever since I'd been away from home, and I just thought they'd continue. I didn't think about being laid off. I went back. I'd spent about all the cash money I had on. We stayed down here about 2 or 3 weeks and went all over. So I went back, and the crash come. So I came back here. They was putting the water, the city water works in here at Benton. That was 1930.
Yes, sir.
And I went in business here on a shoestring. And of course, it didn't take us long to get the ones here in town that had money enough to put plumbing in. I passed some of these older houses, and I see where they're remodeled. I see them old leg tubs and things sitting out in the yard where they've taken out that I put in 1930.
They lasted.
Lasted.
Yeah.
A lot of them, the same pipe that runs into the house,
Yes.
galvanized pipe buried. A lot of times now I see them digging up. They have to put copper now.
Did you and your wife have any children?
Yeah, we had one boy and one girl, and I was the first plumber at TVA Hard over here.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. When they started the
Started.
dam.
They advertised it. Roy Boyd, the personnel manager, would be here Monday morning in Gilbertsfield. I drove down there, and they was parked on the side of the road, a mile out each way. I said, you can't talk to nobody in a crowd like that, Ed. So I just come on back home, and I told my wife, I said, well, I'll wait a day or two. And then, so I got down there to be there at 1 o'clock, where I could be sitting in his office when he come back from lunch. So I told him my experience and all and everything. He said, well, we want you, but we haven't got nothing for you to work with right now. But you'll get a call, and I want you examined and ready to go when we get some material in. So I got started with them, and I stayed all through the building of the village and everything.
Yes, sir.
And then I transferred over to construction. Well, there's driving those coffee dams there to pump out, to pour the. Well, it is in November, and I said, boy, we're getting these pumps all ready to pump out that water, and this winter we'll be right down that mud hole down there. Well, I got a call from a business agent I knew down at Alexander, Louisiana. It's just, we hadn't got into the war then, but they had called out the National Guards.
Yes, sir.
And they was building down there, building those camps.
Yes, sir.
So I went down there. My boy was 10 years old. He's the oldest, and the girl was a year and a half younger. Well, I never would let him have a bicycle. I was afraid of. Well, we was staying in a camp. There was they had little well, just one room for a living room and your bedroom, and then a little place to cook.
Mm-hmm.
So as a whole, they had 22 apartments around like that. I had one of them. Well, he said, now, Dad, if you'll get me a bicycle for Christmas, I won't go out of the park. Well, he never had. My wife was in the hospital, had an operation, and he'd been a-going every night with me down to the hospital to see him, but he wanted to stay home that night. Well, when we come back, he told me about he was riding his bike and the boy was on behind him, and he fell on that post, handlebar post right there, and it knocked the breath out of him, but I didn't know it was that bad. But the next morning, he didn't want to go to school, so when I come back, why, I said, nothing won't lay on his stomach. So I take him down to the clinic, and the doctor said, there's something causing that, and he said, I'd like to bring him here in the clinic for a few days. Well, I went down there, and he told me, said, I'm going to operate at 1 o'clock. But he died that night at 11. He said that was the second case that they'd had a medical meeting. And one other doctor had had a little boy that jumped a ditch and fell on a rock. He got right, all those blood vessels right there where they go into the heart. He said if it had been an inch or two one way or the other, why, any of them had taken care of the others.
Mm-hmm.
He died about 1 o'clock the next morning. He's 10 years old at the time.
Oh,
Then
terrible tragedy.
And I had one other girl. I've got two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is, she's been 20-something years at University of Illinois. She an anthropologist.
Yes,
She's
sir.
been all over the world for them doing research.
Studying
for
various
these
cultures.
and all.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Australia. She stayed down 2 months down there studying the culture of the peoples that had come in there from other
Sure.
places and their offspring.
The regular Margaret Mead.
Yeah, she knew Margaret
Mead.
personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had to go up in the mountains, those Amerecians, where they had pushed them back
Yes, sir.
up in the mountains, and live with them a month up there. And she said they're just 1 degree above headhunters up there. But
That'd make you a little uneasy sleeping, wouldn't it?
she was out like out the other side of Johannesburg, out there, the packs out there where they still had those roving bands.
Well, are you lucky enough to have any grandchildren?
I've got 2 grandsons. My youngest daughter, now she teaches in Florida. She got her master's at Murray.
Yes, sir.
And she had a little skin disease where in cold weather she just had half as much A vitamins as she should have, and the doctor told her she should go
Warmer
climate.
Mm-hmm.
So when she graduated from Murray, she went to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So she is down there. They both, my oldest daughter and her husband were in Japan 6th of June when I had my bad heart attack. And she came in, they came in then.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in twice since then. But I got good reports today from both of my doctors. So
Oh, that's
I'm feeling
fine.
better.
That's real fine.
I'm 81 years old.
Well, we still have about 5 more minutes left. How did you, or maybe when and how did you get started in the real estate business?
Well, I came back here in 1953. Me and my oldest brother had bought a sporting goods and electrical appliance store here. Well, he was a World War I veteran,
Mm-hmm.
and he got sick, and I was in business in Knoxville in the plumbing and heating business. I'd been in that 7 years. After Oak Ridge. I was at Oak Ridge all through there.
Yes, sir.
through it. At one time, I had 800 men under my supervision.
Well, that
And
was a thrilling
I-
time
I'd
in a way.
I've stayed there 36 hours at a time, never left. I was kidding. I said one day, said, I've got laborers that's making more money than I am because I was on a salary and they was working double time for full time.
Yeah.
But I had to sell out one place to another, and you know, you think, well, maybe you want to go back home. So I came back here, and I didn't know nothing about sporting goods. I never hit a golf ball in my life
Yeah.
and all that, so I thought I was going to have to get into something that I knew something about. So I worked off that and got into the plumbing and heating business, and then I had my heart attack in '58, and I got to where they made me sell everything. I'd built the motel down here at that time,
Yes, sir.
and they made me sell everything out, and so it's got to where I'd have to get up at night and drive around. I'd get so darn nervous, so I went to my doctor, and he said, well, you do what you know what you can stand and take care. Well, we had a job over at the plant over at Mayfield, so it was about 3 stories high, and I got climbing ladders and things over there, and I had to go back in.
Yes, sir.
So then I went in the construction business with Charles Story, and I was in partners in my name, J.A. Hill. The last building we built was a science building at Murray.
At Murray State?
Yeah,
Great.
we did it. We built the addition to the library there, and we did a lot of state work, but that was the last building. And I was getting up 64 years old then. Well, of course, we had to stay in business a year to guarantee our work. At that time, Don Page was in partners with us, and he and Charles was doing West Vaco, starting West Vaco. They said, well, come on over here with us. I said, now, I'm 64 years old today, and if I lose what little I've got, I'm too old to make a comeback. Am I running out of time?
Well, we've got about 2 more minutes.
And so they went over there, and I retired again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had broker's license and towed, and Ms. Swan and we went in the real estate business.
And you can work at that at your own pace.
At pace and that. And I stayed with that till after I had my open heart surgery.
Yes, sir.
And so then I quit and I retired again. I couldn't stay retired, so I went to work for the city, and I've been zoning administrator since '78.
Well, isn't that wonderful? That's good.
I'm going to quit the first year, though. I can't.
How old are you now, Mr. Hill?
I'm 81. I'll be 82 next March.
Well, it's about time you were rested
That's
for a while.
But I was brought up to work, and
You enjoy it.
enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much. We've just about run out of time.
Thank you.
And it's been a real pleasure. This is Ray Mofield with the Oral History, and we've been visiting today in the home of Albert Hill, 213 West 12th. We return you now to our studios.